Welcome to the January edition of the Bluegrass Trust deTours. My name is Hutton Goodman. I'm here to show you around Mount Brilliant Farm that my family has owned and operated since 1995. So this is the guest house at Mount Brilliant. It's the oldest building at Mount Brilliant, built in the 1790s after Colonel Russell received the farm as a land grant from Patrick Henry for his service in the French and Indian War. It's pretty neat. So it's got some lofted ceilings where it used to be used as bedrooms kind of for the people here. But in the mid-1800s, a false roof was created, and they would hide escaped slaves up there as a stop on the Underground Railroad, and it was one of the major stops for this region. And you can actually see how the moldings were created to support the false ceiling that was used to hide the escaped slaves. Now we use it as a guest house here. It's decorated by Matt Carter, picked out all the furniture and the design. So now we're in the gardens here at Mount Brilliant. These gardens were designed by Bill Esseret and actually were recognized by the American Society of Landscape Architects in 2002. It's a traditional English style garden. It's designed around these 4 statues that represent the 4 seasons. It was updated later by John Karloftis, who's well known in this area. One of the concepts behind the garden is there's always something in bloom all 4 seasons, and that's why it's centered around the statues of the 4 seasons, so that no matter what time of year you can come out here and enjoy it to some degree, even if you're a little bit cold. After the 4 seasons we have a great lawn, and then just past that we have a hedge maze, which is a fun place for kids and stuff. It's really kind of the center of a lot of our parties, and when we invite people out to the farm, it's always kind of a nice place to gather. The garden was actually originally built in 2000, and every few years since then it's been added on a little bit. It's kind of an ongoing project. So now we're on the Poplar Hill division of Mount Brilliant. It's all connected, but this was a farm that we bought about 7 years ago. It was actually originally part of the larger farm, and it was sold off as a piece, many years ago, and we reacquired it. In the meantime, it had been used as for raising standardbred horses, and it was at one point called the Waverly Stock Farm. Behind me is the main house for Poplar Hill. It was designed in 1929, I believe, by Robert McMeekin, who's actually famous. He did a lot of well-known houses around Lexington, but he's most famous for designing the Keeneland Racecourse, the clubhouse, and all the structures around that. Actually, on the other side of it, you can see there's the second oldest house on the farm, which was also built in the 1790s and is actually in the Bluegrass Trust. When we bought this farm, the old house, the 1790s house, was in great shape. It's beautiful. It's been fully restored by the previous owners, but this one, it was down to studs, and it's on the list of projects of things we're getting ready to fix up, and hopefully we'll have it fully restored to how it was before, and it'll be beautiful. So this is actually the coolest part of the farm. It's this is Man o' War's barn, where he stood stud all but the first year of his stud career while they were building this barn, actually. Man o' War was owned by Mr. Riddle, and so this farm used to be called the Riddle Nursery. But Man o' War was so famous at the time he retired that he was getting so many visitors, it just became a headache for Mr. Riddle. So he actually changed the name to Faraway, so people would just assume it was too far away to visit. The gates behind me are actually the original gates to the farm, but when we modernized the entry to do automatic gates, we moved these here to the barn because they're such cool iron gates. All right, now we're out in front of the Man o' War's actual stall. Man o' War was probably the greatest racehorse that ever lived. He had 30 starts, and he only ever lost one of those starts, and it was to a horse called Upset. And from then on out, whenever an underdog would win in any kind of sporting competition, they actually said it's another upset, and that became what we now know as an upset in all sports. Man O' War was purchased by Mr. Riddle in the Keeneland July Select Sale. He was bought on the same day as his barnmate, Golden Broom. Golden Broom was the most expensive horse ever purchased at Keeneland up to that point at $15,000, and he got Man O' War for $5,000. Man O' War was bred by August Belmont, and it was the first horse he ever sold, supposedly. And it was because he was busy with his service in World War I, and he just couldn't focus on it. And so he offered all his horses that year for sale, and Mr. Riddle purchased him, and the rest is history. So Dr. McGee, who was one of the founders of Haggard Davidson McGee, one of the big vet clinics here in Lexington, was actually taking care of Man O' War towards the end of his life, and he got really sick, and Mr. Riddle he asked Mr. Riddle what he wanted to do. He's like, oh, I want to have a giant casket made for him. It's going to be the first time a horse was buried in its entirety in a human-style casket, complete with like the satin interior, and so he had it made, and they brought it to the barn, and Mr. Riddle was like, that's perfect, but Man O' War actually got better. And so Dr. McGee went to Mr. Riddle and said, well, what do you want me to do with this giant casket you've had made? Oh, we're going to use it eventually. So just leave it leaned up against the wall there. And so Dr. McGee said he always felt guilty that for the last 3 years of his life, Man O' War had to stare at his own casket. He actually was buried out here on the farm, but he was disinterred in the 70s and taken over to the Kentucky Horse Park. And then behind us, actually, which we can see, there is a graveyard where some of the best mothers and daughters and a few of his great sons are buried, and we have the bell, and we can go look at that now. So now we're standing in front of the bell at Faraway Farm in Mount Brilliant. The bell was actually the old Lexington City Fire bell, and when the city got electricity and converted to the electric bells, Mr. Riddle purchased it. Because nowadays we have stable mail where everyone on the farm can keep track of the horses that we have running and know when we've had another winner. But back then, whenever one of Man O' War's progeny would win a race, Mr. Riddle would send somebody out to ring the bell so all the guys on the farm knew that Man O' War had another winner. Surrounding the bell is a graveyard with some of his best sons and daughters, and then the mothers of some of his best sons and daughters. You have Edith Cavell, who was 3-year-old champion, and she's buried right next to her mother, the nurse. It's kind of an interesting name because Edith Cavell was a famous nurse during World War I, I believe, where she was tried for treason for saving all soldiers, not just the ones on her side. And it's a clever name for a horse out of the nurse and Man O' War. Now we're at Russell Cave. The cave is named after the Colonel Russell, who was granted the farm in the land grant from Patrick Henry for his service in the French and Indian War in the 1790s. This cave is part of a larger cave system that extends all the way down to downtown Lexington. It's a huge system. The limestone that you can see is what gives the soil in this region all the protein and calcium that leads to such great racehorses. This cave is actually more than that. It's been a huge kind of gathering place for this community for long before the settlers came. The indigenous people used it, and it's because in the heat of the summers, it's always about 10 degrees cooler here by the mouth of the cave. In the 1800s, Cassius Clay had his famous duel down here where he cut the guy's ear off, and his cousin Henry Clay had to come all the way back from Washington, D.C. to defend him, and got him off, actually. It also, for a long time, provided all the farms around here with their fresh water. There's a basin up by Russell Cave Road where you can see where they used to serve the water to the wagons driving past. So we're now in the office, and I'm standing in front of the original stall door to Man O' War. Was there when he was there, and we actually found it kind of laying on the ground against the wall in the barn. We hung it back up for years, and then somebody came to us and said, you guys really should maybe move this inside. So we have, and it's really neat because you can see where the sun has bleached the name Man O' War into the wood with where the old metal plates used to be. It's really just a piece of racing history. Right across from the stall door is a painting we commissioned by Kelly Brewer. The thing that's special about it, and the reason we had it done, was because in all the paintings of Man O' War, they don't really include Will Harbit. Will Harbit was the groom that took care of Man O' War from the day he was born to right before he died, actually. Man O' War actually died a month after Will Harbit did, and they say he died of a broken heart. We have him standing in the clubhouse watching his horse run. So the main business for Mount Brilliant Farm is that we are a thoroughbred nursery, and we operate in the United States, England, and a little bit in other parts of Europe and Australia. And we breed, race, and sell horses in those three areas. One thing that kind of sets us apart is we also have a whole lot of polo. We breed and sell and play polo here at the farm and down in our farm in Florida. And it's been kind of a fun thing that our family does together. And it's not a business like the thoroughbred operation is, but it's been a very fun thing for us to do as a family. You know, here we a lot of our business we've kind of established ourselves as somebody that goes and plays internationally, you know, in the thoroughbred business, and we'll buy a horse in Australia to bring here, or buy a horse in England or US to send to Australia, and we've really kind of built a business around moving horses around the world. And you know, we love being a part of the racing business and industry everywhere in the world. It's a really special thing to do. And that concludes January's Bluegrass Trust deTours. Thank you for joining us. If you have any other questions about the farm, please visit our website at mtbrilliant.com.